Egg white cocktails. Don't be afraid of them. They're really quite good. Welcome to the Cocktail Spirit from Small Screen Network. I'm your host, Robert Hess. We've got an interesting question here from one of our readers. Now this is Robert asks us, I enjoy the mouthfeel, texture, and froth that egg whites give to cocktails. What is the best way to use egg whites in cocktails, and are there any risks in using them? I've heard some say that all cocktails with raw egg whites should only be mixed in a blender. Others say that dried egg whites should be used in cocktails. Most bartenders use raw egg whites, always do a dry shake of the ingredients before adding ice. What's the difference in these methods? Well, let's get to the first issue here is regarding the egg whites and blenders. I'm not quite sure why someone would say you have to use a blender in all drinks. It could be that they don't like the energy it takes to shake the drink in order to get it frothy. A blender would get it fairly frothy, or you could even use one of those little latte spinner things that I see battery operated that can blend it up as well. Or you can just use the dry shake method that I'm going to show with this drink. Another issue people have with egg whites is from the standpoint of the risks involved. Now, eggs can carry salmonella. Latest reports say it's probably 1 in 20,000 eggs might possibly be infected with a salmonella bacteria, and that's, even that is probably like too liberal of a thing. It's probably far less than that. We're seeing far more salmonella issues with things that you would never expect to have salmonella before. So I think eggs are pretty safe from that standpoint. A big issue there is you want to blend eggs together. Like if you have a big gigantic pot of raw eggs, and if one of those eggs had salmonella, it would take and infect everything. And so you want to try to use your eggs as fresh as possible, as locally produced as possible, organic, and one at a time. That said, there's very little risk involved, and I definitely would not recommend using pasteurized eggs or dried eggs because that changes the texture, changes the taste of the drinks quite a bit. If you're concerned about the health risks of using eggs, raw eggs, I would say just avoid raw egg drinks. Myself, I love raw egg drinks. I think they're fabulous, and I hope you will too. That said, let's get started on this drink. It's called the Apricot Lady. It starts off with 1 ounce of white rum, followed by 1 ounce of apricot liqueur, apricot brandy, followed by a 1/2 ounce of lime juice, followed by a 1/4 ounce of orange Curaçao. And lastly, the recipe calls for 1/2 of an egg white. Now, I'm going to use 1/2 an egg white. It can be difficult to measure 1/2 an egg white because they are rather viscous and they blop off and you get a whole bunch of them going on there. If you're having trouble with it, I would recommend just putting the whole egg white in there. You might want to maybe try one each way. One with where you're trying to get a 1/2 an egg white and one where you don't, and see if there's a difference in your mind. A full egg white will add more froth and foam to the drink, because otherwise you got to take and do this method and then carefully see if I can only get 1/2 of that in there. So I got more than 1/2 in there, maybe 3/4 or 5/8, but we'll see if that works fine. Now, the person who asked the question at the beginning of the show was asking about the dry shake. The dry shake is a method that was invented by Chad Solomon at the Pegu Club because he had a broken back, and taking the big heavy ice that they used there and shaking was just really tiring him out and hurting his back even more. And so out of necessity, he created a method called the dry shake, which is a lot easier and less energetic way to take and emulsify the eggs together. It's done by basically taking the drink without any ice at all. You then take the spring off a Hawthorne strainer. You can just stick it on like this. I usually spin it together to create a donut. Stick it in, and then shake it up. Now, shaking an egg white, it's going to foam up a bit and it's going to cause the shaker to break, so you want to make sure you get a good tension like this on it. And you still need to shake it for a lot longer than you normally would shake a cocktail. But since the ice is in there, it's not quite as stressful on your body. Then take the spring out and putting in a rinsing bucket. And now we're going to add the ice to the drink. Besides not being as body stressful because of the weight of the shaker for the dry shake, egg whites don't froth up, emulsify quite as well when they're cold, and so the dry shake allows them to emulsify better. And then I also use a cheaper strainer of mine. It doesn't hold back quite as much of the ice, but it also doesn't hold back quite as much of the egg whites either, so more of the egg whites get into the drink as foam rather than being strained out like they would if I used a finer mesh strainer like that. Notice how the egg white and the cocktail are separating. You get a nice foam from the egg whites here on the top. If I had gotten only half of an egg white in there, the foam probably would have been a little bit less, so I'd get more of a foam for that, and so the mouthfeel is going to be a little bit more, a little stronger, heavier with the half egg white, with the 3/4 egg white that I got rather than a half. The double layer actually is very interesting because my top lip is feeling the foam of the egg white, while then the cocktail is coming in the bottom half. So I'm feeling the liquid of the cocktail come down. It's got a nice crisp flavor to it. The sweetness of the rum, the apricot liqueur, and the Curaçao are taking and adding a nice, wonderful flavor from that standpoint. And then the lime juice is coming in and balancing against that. So that it's not quite a sour style drink. It's not like a daiquiri or margarita, but it's nice and refreshing. It'd be a great morning drink. A lot of the egg white drinks seem to be done more morning style. The Ramos Gin Fizz, the Eye Opener, and other drinks like that. And so this style of drink is more of a morning style drink. And I think it's quite delightful. The Apricot Lady.